Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite warlock and practicing necromancer. And tonight I'm going to do another book review. In fact, I'm going to do numerous book reviews because they're based off Robert Greene's work. Now, those of you who attended my last video, where I did a book review on William Cooper's Dark Psychology and Manipulation, you're going to see where all this comes into play and how you can add to your personalized arsenal. Okay? So, the first one, or I should say the first two, is the 48 Laws of Power and the 33 Strategies of Warfare. Okay? If you want to learn about strategies, if you want to learn about the different perspectives on how to deal with people, things to do, things not to do, how to work through a crowd. Let's say, for an example, you're working with friends or potential friends that could turn out to be, enemies. Okay, we've all been there. People who claim to be your brother, your friend, you know, and yet they're going to talk about you behind your back, right? When you're not even there. Now, the ironic part about this is when you get into the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene doesn't just go into things like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He doesn't go into Seneca's work or any of the other Stoic philosophers. He actually brings to you things that took place in history. Okay? And he really spells it out for you and how it unfolded and what it did to the individuals, either good or bad. I like that aspect of this. And I first came across the 48 Laws of Power through Leonard, Elmera, Booker Leonard Elmera's book reviews. So I kind of like that. So I went out and I got quite a few of the books that he recommended during that one live video that he did on books to read. Now, I didn't care for a lot of them, but the 48 Laws of Power really stuck out to me. Now, as somebody who has read the Art of War, read the book War and Peace, you know, books on strategy and warfare, I've got to say that this is one of the best written ones for modern age that I've come across. Not one of these ancient books like The Art of War by Lao Tzu, Sun Tzu, but more of the more mundane things that we deal with today. Okay, from work to dealing with things. And as I said in my last video, I've got a friend who recently found out that people that she's worked with have suddenly turned against her out of the blue. And it's like, okay, well, number one of these individuals is going for general manager. The other is trying to find a more favorable ass kissing, posture, if you will. The 48 Laws of Power will speak on this. And, it deals with a lot of things. And the number one thing that I took out of this is not just never outshine the master. And I did learn this while working for Tractor Supply. It was something that really stuck out to me because one of the things when I asked him, my manager, I said, will you teach me, what you do? Why is it that you do it? You play these games. Why is it that you do, you know, this segregation type stuff? And he literally told me that there's a bigger picture and not everybody has that picture. Instead, think of running a business like having a jigsaw puzzle. Best way I can describe that. a jigsaw puzzle. Each individual employee has a piece of that puzzle that they've got to complete. Okay? And that kind of made sense to me. And then when you get into Robert Kiyosaki's work, specifically that of Rich Dad Poor Dad, you really find that everything we do strategically, such as learning the laws, learning our rights, either from an employee's perspective or a citizen's perspective, to how we can handle ourselves with friends and family, that it really is like the game of Monopoly. It's that trial and error factor where you got to learn for yourself. So if you get a chance to learn from somebody that's more wiser than you, I'd recommend taking it, especially when you can go to somebody and say, "Hey, can you teach me how to make money work for me?" Or, "Hey, can you teach me how to become a businessman like you, to be able to run my own store?" Or, "What does it take to do something like this?" Okay, this is a ways for you to learn, and I really like the fact that he actually goes into details on every single one of these chapters and the topics that go along with it. Okay. From another perspective, always say less than necessary. Okay. I know a lot of individuals that they tend to take a 10-second breather. Think of it as a 10 count before they reply to certain things. And I actually started paying attention to this one perspective from Grim Hustle. And he said always count to 10 before you reply or to give your answer to people. And I really like that. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Very, very good stuff. And like I said, this is very, very good. Um, the 33 Strategies of War goes along great with this. Namely because of the fact that if you're trying to make yourself more valuable, you'd really want to be that ghost in the machine, if you will. You know, when I sit out in the lobby of my apartment complex, you'd be sitting there and all of a sudden the elevator door would just open automatically and then close automatically a few seconds later. No one's even in the elevator. And there's a joke that we have here at this complex, that says that there is a ghost that rides the elevator. The place is haunted. And to be fair with how many people have died, perished, the fire, there was a fire apparently, from what I'm told, by the landlord, just in my unit alone, that there was a snake that died here, that people have died in this apartment. And it's like, geez, as a necromancer, no wonder I feel at home. But you look at the death current in that factor, and that increases with your practice. When you have the gates and the portals, everything aligned and set up, you fortify your defenses. And that's the ironic part about the 33 strategies of warfare, is the very first thing that caught my attention is declare war on your enemies. The polarity strategy. This does not just apply to your enemy, it also applies to you. And you'll see what I mean in just a few minutes. I want you to think about what you did last year, okay, or the year before that, and the year before that. Did you ever make any, if you're into the whole world thing, when it comes time for, say, for an example, let's go with New Year's resolutions. Did you make any promises, okay, to yourself? Did you apply anything to change? Did you bring anything around that put you on track for your goals? They talk about self-motivation, discipline, commitment to those tests and those trials and those changes. But did you actually do that? Well, the first thing they tell you to do in certain videos is to write it down, because that by writing it down you make it reality. This is called manifestation. Okay? So when you manifest your thoughts and make it and see it visually, you manifested that. So now you got to check those things off and complete them. This is what it mean. This is what he means by in 33 strategies, just on chapter 1, where it says declare war. Okay? Declare war on your enemies. What is your enemies? Is it your laziness? Is it your lack of self-discipline? How about your lack of enthusiasm to move higher up in your company that you work for? How about going out and actually making the changes to your life if you're looking to get a girlfriend, a husband or whatever? Are you looking to make those changes? And if you are, then you've got to declare war on whatever is holding you back so that you can go forward and to do this shit. Okay? And I really like that about this book, is it's not just that. And I want to just read something to you. And I thought this was kind of interesting, because in red letters, right on under the first page of the preface, it says, "The life of man upon earth is warfare." This is Job chapter 7, verse 1. And on every page, you will find the stories that he's putting, the psychological facts from psychologists to sociologists, which argue through a lot of things. But more so, you're going to find the stories that he is getting his point across through. And on the side of the pages, you'll see in red lettering, certain things like, for an example, let me just go to one of these smaller ones here. Okay, page 6. Political thought and political instinct prove themselves theoretically and practically in the ability to distinguish friend and enemy. The high points of politics are simultaneously the moments in which the enemy is in concrete clarity recognized as the enemy. Carl Schmitt, 1888 to 1985. Wow. So that's 1888 to 1995. So he literally puts the date on the individual who spoke those words. Okay? So even if you go into, say for an example, let's go to page 13, it shows the image. The earth, the enemy, is the ground beneath your feet. It has a gravity that holds you in place, a force of resistance. Root yourself deep in this earth to gain firmness and strength. Without the enemy to walk upon, to trample, you lose your bearings in all sense of proportion. Wow. Okay? And that's the element of earth. Okay? We call it Mother Earth, right? Well, think about it like this. Let's do it from a biblical perspective here, shall we? Now, in the Bible, it says that you will bruise the serpent's head, and the serpent's head will bruise the bottom of your foot. Is that not the same variation as what I just read to you? So, strategy and the way you perceive things will help you either to advance or to get your ass in trouble, possibly terminated, executed, tortured, or whatever, depending on how you react to things. So strategy is a very big thing. And the 48 Laws of Power and the 33 Strategies of War really put that into perspective. And like I said, I thought he did an excellent, excellent job. I do recommend those. Now, let's say for an example, you want to work on manipulation. Okay. The Concise Art of Seduction. Very, very good thing. And unlike the 33 Strategies of Warfare and the 48 Laws of Power, this book deals on various different types of manipulations from emotional perspectives, not just the physical responses. This book here really touches on, how should I say this? I'm going to just read down through. He splits it up into various different perspectives. For an example, in chapter 1, you have the siren, the rake, the ideal lover, the dandy, the natural, the conquet, the charmer, the charismatic, and the star. Okay? Now, here he breaks down the various different types of personalities, much like Anton LaVey did in the witches, the Satanic Witch. You know, the both in the original and the remastered, if you will, or I should say the first and second edition. But when you're dealing with the clock perspective, from dominant to submissive to sub to dominant type thing, if you want to get into BDSM, if you will. And then you got the different personality types of what kind of car, what kind of job, how you're going to dress, how you're going, what kind of woman or man you're going to go for, that whole stuff. And he really did an awesome job breaking this down and expanding on the different personalities, if you will. And then he goes into understanding of observation. And you remember earlier I said Marcus Aurelius, for an example. If you get into Marcus Aurelius's book Meditations, one of the things that comes out clear is observation. If you go into the Art of War by Sun Tzu, for an example, you notice the art of observation, because you're going to be observing your enemy. You're going to be observing your victim, your targets, and how you utilize your methods and your approach is basically the same thing as dark psychology and manipulation by William Cooper. So you're seeing a lot of different aspects of how you can approach someone, how you can destroy them or to create them, get them to fall for you or to get what you want, depending on which selective personality type or persona you want to get into. It goes into the mixed signals appear to be the object of desire, create triangles, create a need, stir anxiety. One of the things that I started doing is a couple of years ago is I started separating myself from the rest of society. This, by setting myself apart, I became the role model. Okay, I became the model for the company that I worked for. I had district managers getting bakers and openers to go by the model that I set. Because I could get a store up and running. I'm talking the bake done, the store set up, the store opened up, the tills in the registers, everything within about a 60 to 90 minute period by myself. And then after that, they brought other people in and it got fucked up from there. But welcome to corporate, right? But anyways, the point is that you set yourself aside and you make yourself valuable. You make them realize, hey, this guy is worth my time, or this woman is worth my time. They're not here just to fill in and do the base minimal. This guy's putting the time and the effort in and getting shit done. Okay? So literally, I became the siren. I created the need. Okay? And I really like that because this book really goes into it, and I didn't stop there. Now, as many of you know, my son's mother and I separated a few years back. Okay? Even to this day, I am the first, perhaps the first person that she ever comes to. Okay. And a lot of that is because I don't judge, I guide. Okay. What she does with that information that I give, the wisdom wise, is up to her. But the fact that she would rather call me before her parents, or to say whatever boy toy she has going on right now, is kind of interesting. She could be calling her boyfriend, hey, the dogs got out. Can you come in and help me, gather them up? Help me find them. Or, you know, um, I don't have any groceries. What can I do? Well, guess what? I am fulfilling that need. Why? Because I'm running, I'm supplying pretty much for two households right now. And I'm listening. She pointed out the fact that it's my job to listen, not just because I'm a minister, an ordained archbishop, a multi faith religions background, but that it's my job as a guy to listen. It doesn't matter what she's bitching about or what she's complaining about. It's the fact that I listen. And you know what? This is spread into other areas. For example, landlords, neighbors. People come to me because I'm dependable, because I don't judge. I listen, but I also guide. Okay? You want to become a seducer or a seductor or whatever. This is a book for you to get. Okay? Now, let's say for an example that you are a couch potato. When I say couch potato, I'm not talking somebody that just lounges. Let's say for an example you're naturally lazy. Okay, let's say for an example you want to better yourself, you want to work on yourself. You want to find methods and let's say for an example tools, the right tools to make yourself more noticeable. Maybe you're a single guy or a single woman. You want to become better at witchcraft, sorcery. Perhaps you want to delve further into that area and open up a metaphysical store. Perhaps you want to open up a church or a temple. I can't tell you how many people I see in groups on Facebook. How do I join Satan? How do I give myself to Satan? How do I sell my soul to Satan? How do I begin my journey into such a religion? Or better yet, how about some of these local groups where people are, don't want to talk about politics, but yet they need to know certain things about the city that they've lived in for years? Huh. Here's a thought. If you need money, why don't you, learn to be a taxi driver? How about an Uber driver? Just out of an example. I mean, there are Uber drivers just for one ride is like $90. Now you imagine how many, if you take, say for an example, 6 people at $90 a trip. Wow. How about $30 a trip? Okay. I mean, you consider even in a taxi, it starts out at like $6, $7 right off the bat and goes from there, depending on how many miles you're going. I mean, people will be willing to spend $200 just to go from one city to another. Wow. Interesting how that works, right? Or better yet, how about you maybe want to start your own business? How would you do that? What kind of degrees would you need to start a business? Or better yet, what kind of courses could you take? Would you be willing to get off your behind and actually go out and study some of these materials? Get them off, like, say, Amazon, YouTube, um, Abe Books, go to Books of a Million, get them off, like, say, Walmart.com or whatever, you know, or perhaps go to your local college, be it a community college or a big time college, and go, hey, do you have anything, you know, of this nature for courses, and see what fits you and what your agenda is. Well, Mastery is that book that I would recommend. And the reason that I would do that is because of the fact that as people, there are two aspects that we see. One is the socialites. We'll call them let's go with introverts versus extroverts. Okay. Now we see people as they are: social intelligence. We see people, the alchemy of knowledge. You know, we see, let's say, move towards resistance and pain. A lot of people, when they get hurt, they'd rather go away from the pain instead of enduring it. And one of the things that I learned from reading Rich Dad Poor Dad was, and being a necromancer on top of that, is tests and trials make you better. You have to endure these tests and these trials to become more advanced. It's the best way I can put it to you. Okay? So, I'm going to read something. This is on page 77 in this book, and it's about halfway down, give or take. What separates masters from others is often something surprisingly simple. Whenever we learn a skill, we frequently reach a point of frustration. What we are learning seems beyond our capabilities. Give, Giving into these feelings, we unconsciously quit on ourselves before we actually give up. Among the dozens of pilots in Rodriguez's class who never made the cut, almost all of them had the same talent level as he did. The difference is not simply a matter of determination, but more of trust and faith. Many of those who succeed in have failed have had the experience in their youth of having mastered some skill, a sport or a game, a musical instrument, a foreign language, and so on. Buried in their minds is the sensation of overcoming their frustrations and in entering the cycle of accelerated returns. In moments of doubt, in the present, the memory of the past experience rises to the surface. Filled with trust in the process, they trudge on well past the point at which others slow down or mentally quit. Wow. Amazing is all I got to say. And it goes on to even more gnosis on top of that. But this book here is one that, as a practitioner of multi-faith religions, I can tell you that I have seen people with great potential. They hit that wall and they just run away. I have seen where Catholics has turned pagan and pagans have turned Baptists. I have seen where these traditions have broken people down and flipped their worlds upside down. Hell, I'm one of them. Okay? I will tell you that right now. I am one of these fucking people. In the past, I've hit rock bottom I don't know how many times. I stood in the road on Pennsylvania Ave in South Tucson, yelling at the sky, for any God that wanted that. Why is you doing this to me? Is this some kind of fucking joke? Because I've hit that rock bottom. I know what it's like to hit that rock bottom. See, it's not just you and what you're going through. I've hit it. Okay? But if you want to learn to rise above it, how to go beyond those tests, to endure them, this is a book for you. Okay? And if you want to learn about nature, the nature of humanity, the laws of human nature, that's a little bit of a dry read, kind of parapsychology aspect, if you will. Very, very good book, though. There's a lot of good knowledge here. I'm going to show it to you right now. Think of it like this. Those of us in the occult, we use what is called a lifeline. The wheel of time. And what it is it's a wheel that has the zodiacs. It has both the light and the dark zodiacs. It's got the alchemical symbols, and it's got the different seasons of the year. Okay, so it's not just the planetary aspects, and it tells you about your nature, if you will. Now, everybody who's gotten into the zodiacs knows that Aries is a fire sign. You know that it's one of constant war, drama, passion, rage, basically deep-seated emotion, but it's a warrior sign. It's a symbol of a physical warrior, But if you get into things like Pisces, or let's go with Leo, then you're dealing with a different type of personality. Let's go with the Gemini. Geminis are much like Aries, quick to temper, but very cool down type aspects to our demeanors. But here it is. When you get into Geminis, they're very stubborn, pig-headed, even. It's always their way or the highway. You get into a Pisces or a Sagittarius, you're going to be dealing with other things, other types of personalities. Like, you're very forgiving, but you're going to remember shit like an elephant. Okay? Trust me, my mother brings shit, my foster mother brings shit up that's from like years ago, like 2-3 decades ago, so it's there. But this book here, like I said, it's very, very, it's got a total of 18 chapters to it. Meditate on your common mortality. Seize the historical moment. See the hostility behind the friendly facade. Make them want to follow you. Resist the downward pull of the group. Advance with a sense of purpose. Reconnect to the masculine or feminine within you. I actually got that one there. That's chapter 12, by the way. Reconnect with the masculine and the feminine within you. That one there spoke to me personally. I really liked how that was written in there, because you're dealing with the authentic gender, the keys to human nature, the gender projection types, the original man or woman. Just about every religion has something similar to that. But I found it very, very interesting. And once you get into chapter 13, advance with a sense of purpose, the voice, the key to human nature, strategies for developing a high sense of purpose, and the lore of false purposes. Amazingly good writing here. And he doesn't just go into this stuff. He puts in things like, if you come across any special trait of meaningless or stupidity, you must be careful not to let it annoy or distress you, but to look upon it merely as an addition to your knowledge, a new fact to be considered in studying the character of humanity. Your attitude towards it will be that of the mineralogist who stumbles upon a very characteristic specimen of a mineral. This was Arthur, and I'm probably going to be butchering this name, Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer. Okay? And I mean, he goes into a lot of things. He talks a little bit about Carl Jung, Heinz Kohut, Donald Winnicott, John Bowlby, Melanie Klein. These are a lot of interesting people that have really opened things up for you. And what I just read to you was actually in the preface. But once you get into chapter 1, master your emotional self, how many of us have just lost our temper at work or with family and friends? Like, we just hit that fucking wall, And then you sit there and it's like, where did that come from? Why did it happen? That's a great book to understand the nature of humanity. Not just from the emotional sense, the physical sense, the mental self. Okay? So I want you to think about this. When we get into witchcraft, the first thing that we go up against is the witch's creed, the witch's oath, the witch's pyramid, which is basically the same fucking thing with 3 different names. So I don't know whose idiotic idea it was to do that. But it's there. Okay? Now, I want you to think about the 48 laws of power and how it can apply to the laws of human nature. How do you observe that? How do you deal with that? How do you respond to that? One of the things I started doing from learning from this book was when people get emotional, I just sit back and let them get it out. The reason for that is because I have to remember my own temper, my own temperament, and what I'm capable of doing. When people come at me in a hostile manner, it says more about them than it does about me. So by me remaining neutral, number one, it's making them look bad. Number two, it's a semi-healthy release. But also, you put them on the defensive because you're not reacting. As my son's mother so colorfully put it to me a few weeks back, is not. You'll get a kick out of this, because she knows I'm an ordained archbishop. She looked at me in 2 points of view. One, it's my job. Okay. Number two, I listen. I think back to the apostolic evangelist that got me interested in ministry years ago, back in 2009. And I have to say that something he said that I remember today is that I listen. I listen. And I give good advice. Now, as you know, I am not a Christian. I will never be a Christian. But here it is. That wisdom is still there when somebody else sees what you're capable of doing, if you put your mind to it. So these books here are what I would recommend to you. Now, there is one more book, and it's called The 50th Law. And it was put forth by 50 Cent and Robert Greene. I have read this book about 2 times now. And I'm not really big on it. But it does make a few good points. Okay? For an example, on page 137, passive aggressors. And I've come across a lot of these, and a lot of them is general managers or those higher up that thinks they're entitled, you know? So I want to read something to you. The types are masters at disguise. These types are masters at disguise. They present themselves as weak and helpless, or highly moral and righteous, or friendly and ingr- This makes them hard to pick out at first glance. They send all kinds of mixed signals, alternating between friendly, cool, and hostile, creating confusion and conflicting emotions. Now, those of you who have watched my videos for a while now, there was a manager. I've talked about him a few times. This is something that made perfectly good sense: passive aggressiveness. You know, the way he acted, seemed friendly to those that worked hard, okay, and always put the effort in. But those who created issues or problems, he would just go off the fucking rails, okay? And I mean go off the rails. Like, one moment he's laughing, he's having a great time, being the general manager. The next, he's threatening to dock people's pay and to, cut people's hours and, you know, my store, that entitlement era, my store, my product, my bonus. And it's like, last time I knew, you were preaching the whole team thing. Now, last time I knew, there was no I in team. So where did it become about you? All about you, your store, your product, your bonus. What about the rest of us, right? Well, and then you see how he comes down on certain individuals that go by the laws, like, say, food safety laws or OSHA laws. You know, the penal codes for those that protect the community from things like eating bread that was corrupted by swamp bugs because it was poorly wrapped, left by a sink with dishes half full of soapy water, and left overnight, not put in the fridge. Or how about the mini cooler at the sandwich station being left up so it dethaws, and yet you want us to serve the meat, the eggs, or whatever else is in there to the public? That's a food safety hazard right there. That means you're giving spoiled food to customers. Wow. Okay. So when you call them out, this is what happens. They send mixed signals, being friendly, cool, and hostile, creating confusion and conflicting emotions. If you try to call them on their behaviors, they use this confusion to make you feel guilty. Again, dark psychology and manipulation. As if you were the one with the who was the source of the problem. And that's the one thing I noticed about any kind of job. Even if you go into a temple or a church situation, there's always that individual or group collective that takes form, which is why I don't like getting involved in things like such as churches and temples. Because you have the elders who, let's say the dark magus, the dark pope, if you will, down to the warlock, witch, that just have their own perspective of things. And then you have the elderly that is in that order or that temple that has their own perspective of what the doctrines and everything is about. And then you have the youth that has their own group believing in what they think it means. It's complete chaos. You know, no one's following the same mandates. So, and when you call them out on their hypocrisy, like, say, for example, atheistic Satanism, who do you think you're calling on when you call upon Satan, who is the king of this earth, the Lord of the world, okay, which is also in 2 Corinthians 4:4, by the way, to bestow the powers of magic or sorcery upon the practitioner? So, if you're calling on Satan and his demons for their guidance, for their help, for their power to be bestowed upon you, and then you're going to deny it, then you're going to deny them, that's hypocrisy. Okay? And like I said in a book review a while back on satanic books, specifically that of the book of the black, wait, the book of the divine black flame of Satan. There we go, by Vokokalakis Oriax, who pointed that out very, very truthfully, watered it down, made it incredibly to the point. I gotta give that guy props, even though, my brother, he's a good brother, a good friend, and he's no longer with us. So you gotta point that out. So, anyways, the value of these books that I have put out here is to show you that it doesn't matter if you're on the job, if you're in a relationship, if you're, in a circle of friends, or if you're just simply in a religion that you're trying to maneuver through like it's a minefield. And yes, I just used the term minefield, the proverbial minefield analogy. Is when you start learning about human nature, you start unlearning about, how should I say this, identifying the threats, the fakes. I've had people message me out of the blue. I've never had anything to do with these people before. And they get underneath my Telegram or my WhatsApp that I used to have. And all of a sudden they would say, hey, what you doing? My name is so-and-so. Send me this type of photo. And it's like, okay, what can I do for you? You looking for my services? Because I run a business. I run and promote my own sorcery. On top of that, I have an apprenticeship for black adepts that want to learn magic. Okay? But no, these individuals want to waste your time. So you start paying attention to certain vocabulary changes, such as terminologies of how they respond to you. They'll call you by certain names. Their spelling will suddenly decrease. And then excuses start. Just to name a couple. This is human behavior. It's all right here. So by the time you get into people coming to you for your services, you've also got these other types that are there just to inquire. I had a guy last year kept hitting me up for about 5-6 months last year, wanting to hire me to remove a family curse that was placed on him and his family. But yet he never took his stones out and put the money forth to do it. Instead, he preferred to be ruled by fear, number one. Number two, ruled by doubts, which is attributed by fears, which is feeding his instability and mental turmoil, if you will. But more so, he kept playing games. So I ended up blocking him. I don't have time for that shit. I'm definitely not going to put up with it. If you come to me, you're going to pay me my due. Plain and simple. You're going to pay me for my services, my skills, the materials that I expend on you. People like this are not worth your time. And when you read these books, you're going to understand how they're using that psychology. I believe there's a book called The Crowd, and it's by Gustav's. What is it, Gustav? I believe it is. He wrote a book on parapsychology of perspectives of an individual's perspective, meaning how you learn, how you adapt, how you learn to do things on your own. And then once you get into a herd collective, all your morals, all your ethics go out the window, and it becomes all about the herd mentality. Okay? This is stuff that you will learn within these books and within any given topic, from religion to work to relationships, everything. I've watched my son's mother drive sometimes, and I call her out on it, and she'll turn around and she'll go, "Well, you taught me." I said, "I taught you how to drive, not to be stupid." It's like, come on. Like, I'll teach her how to fix things, like how to work on cars, how to identify certain problems, so she can do it herself, like how to change a light bulb in her vehicle so she doesn't need to call on me or her boyfriend or take it to a mechanic or whatever. I try to teach her this stuff, and then she'll still call upon me to do it, which is all right. I don't mind doing it, but it's that perspective of you either do or you don't. There is no in between. But you got to understand that you don't want to step on toes, but you don't want to be the victim either. So you have to sit there and find that intermediary state, and literally in that proverbial minefield, you got to work your way through to get to that other side. And that's where the tests and trials come in, because it's going to make you a better practitioner. It's going to make you a better individual, and you're going to just look through all this BS. So those are the books that I recommend to you of Robert Greene's. I know he has like one or two more out there, I think. One is a daily book that you can do on a daily basis. And I can't remember if he was coming out with another one after that. I think he put one out for women as well, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Don't take my word on that one. But that, I would recommend just these books alone, these 5 books. These 5 or 6 books. Yeah, 6 books. 7 if you count Dark Psychology and Manipulation by William Cooper. But I wanted you to hear that that chapter and that verse because I know a lot of people automatically go to the Bible. So Job chapter 7 verse 1, okay, was the name of that verse. And like I said, it's a very interesting perspective of the earth, man being on earth. And the life of man upon earth is a warfare. I would have gotten rid of the A, but I'm not the writer and I'm not the author. So the life of man upon earth is a warfare. Job chapter 7 verse 1. Okay. So you'd be able to get in there and actually learn this stuff and kind of just see, if you think this is hell, being in the physical, dealing with all this shit, Wait until you go to the next realm, the next dimension, the afterworld. You're going to be up against a whole new level. And if you haven't mastered this, how are you going to deal with that? That's all I got to say. So, with that said, let's see here. Evil Gammon 666. Which variation of the Satanic Bible? There's numerous Bibles out there, bub. Christopher Curtin, J3H, welcome. Sydney 3Y, well, hello. Like I said, it comes down to which variation. There's a couple out there. Are you referring to the original put out by him? Or are you referring to the ones of the interpretations of the original Bible put out by him that other people have written about him? Because his works have been regurgitated so much that it's now a fad. I'm just saying. Circles of Protection, TWU. Thoughts on King Cobra, JFS. God rest the king's soul. Huh. Interesting. Carlos MLP 3251, left hand. Jeffrey 524, welcome, brother. Ryas Beckham, U1R. It's wizard time, most definitely. Now, I do have plans to, and I will say this now, I do have plans because there was a question about one or two book reports back on necromancy books that I would recommend. So I want you to know I am choosing books that would be based off necromantic rites and rituals that I would recommend. I've been going through my personal library and just meditating on which books to do the book report on, so you'd be able to go out and get them. So, just a little FYI on that. All right. With that said, I'm going to get off here. All right. I've been on here for just about an hour now. So, I always try to leave you guys with a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight, which is why I live my life by two creeds, two rules. The first is whatever you preach, always back it up with numerous sources, references, so people can look them up. And the other is always make yourself available to the public. You are responsible for the things that you do and say. All right? So, with that said, I'm getting off here. I want to thank everybody who's jumped on here with me. It's appreciated. If you like what I do, feel free to hit that notification button and the subscribe button. Nobody's twisting your arm. It is your choice to do. All right. And until next time, I want to thank you, and we'll see you at the next video. All right. Have a good night, good day, wherever you are in the world. I'm out.